thank you for joining us today to hear how we're using next generation technology in the healthcare industry, really focused today on interoperability, FHIR, generative AI, and just kind of data science synergy. A little bit about Pronix, if you're not familiar. We're well known for our expertise really in application development, cloud IT, QA testing, and DevOps. We also design and implement data management, digital transformation programs on the whole. Over 85% of our consultants are based right here in the US, so Pronix has become known as a leader in talent in both your time zone or even on your location. So I've been talking a little bit in the background with Kishore Damputi, the VP here at Pronix, and I kind of share what I'm hearing and also get a feel for what he's hearing, and really have found that there's a lot of uncertainty in healthcare around technology and terms, and also how best to use and leverage them. So Kishore pulled together a solid panel of kind of thought leaders and all-stars in the industry that are living a lot of this technology, implementing it, have learned some of what it does well, and maybe can hint at some things it doesn't do so well. So what we're going to do today, we're going to kind of forego the introductions. As one of the joys of LinkedIn webinars, you can look everybody's CV up right there in the background. So we've got Ganesh and Cindy and Kurt here with us. What I'm going to do is just kind of go through and have them lead a question and then kind of build on it. It's just like you're sitting at the table here with us. As you have questions, feel free to enter them in the LinkedIn live stream. We'll be looking at those. We're going to answer most of them probably at the end of the session. So we'll be here for about an hour. All right, well, let's get underway. Kurt, I wanted to kind of open up with you and have you talk a little bit about the evolution of healthcare interoperability. And I was wondering, can you share your insights on the current state of healthcare interoperability and the main challenges we face in achieving seamless data sharing these days?
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. And thanks again for inviting me. Happy to be a part of the panel today. I mean, certainly for those of us who've been in healthcare for a long time, interoperability has been a hot topic, and we've all been engaged in interoperability for a decade or more. Quite honestly, I think it's much driven by regulation, certainly out of the regulatory bodies at the federal and state level, but also driven from a need for this care coordination aspect among providers and other players in the ecosystem to drive data sharing that is impacting health outcomes. So as the industry is trending away from volume-based delivery of services, so think fee-for-service, and more towards value-based care, that necessitates the need for all of us to cooperate in the ecosystem and share the information that we have. So that, I believe, is, those two kind of forces are driving everybody more towards robust interoperability. And certainly as you look at the exchanges that are out there, the HIEs, participation is continuing to cooperation with vendors and partners that are out there. So, for example, the Commonwealths, Care Qualities of the world, and leveraging relationships with partners out there to connect into the exchanges. So, as far as the future is concerned, absolutely going to accelerate, become more robust. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about FHIR APIs. We've got some experts on the panel here later on in the conversation. I'll just kind of finish off my comments with, your question about challenges. I mean, certainly in the healthcare world, we've evolved from paper-based processes and fax machines, and believe it or not, there's still a lot of faxing that gets on in this industry. So a lot of our processes are still somewhat based on paper. In essence, we've digitized paper. But I think the beauty of where we're headed from an interoperability standpoint and leveraging a lot of the latest modern technology is moving to true data sharing. And so we can digitize processes in a much more efficient way. And I'm thinking there about, CDA, the document-based format for exchanging information, moving to true, FHIR API-based information that allows us to parse out, things like care plans and get a much more robust view of the data and be able to capture it, analyze it, and leverage that information.
Yeah, great example. Cindy, just anything that we kind of missed that you've already lived and can share with us?
I think Kurt really hit on it as you serve that up in a care plan. From a provider's perspective, if you have to use that care plan, it needs to be served in a way that's usable in their workflow. Because today, the reason they are still using fax machines and faxes is because it works in the workflow. And providers don't have time to stop what they're doing and rearrange their workflow for another interoperability tool, which is, what we did is we shoved in a lot of stuff in interoperability and called it good, but yet it didn't work in actually the people taking care of the patients. So Kurt really, I think, hit on exactly where the future is headed, is true serving those that are serving the patients. So that connection has to occur. And FHIR, I think, is attempting to do what we tried to do 10 years ago. And like anything in process improvement, we think we got it right. And 10 years later, we got it wrong and we're getting it righter. If that's such a thing, we're continuing to prove.
Nice. Great. Ganeshan, anything else that you think about just for kind of light challenges and kind of what inspires you a little bit? I think I got you on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to thank you and Kishore for organizing this event with an excellent panel of experts. Thank you for doing this. And again, I think Kurt and Cindy nailed it actually, about the interoperability challenges there. But I would like to add a few things basically on top of it, right? I know, as all of you know here, there's a significant shift moving from HL7 to a more modern FHIR system, right? And for those who have used HL7, I don't want to say the word painful, but it was painful, right? It was a document-based document. But now FHIR is more designed to be very nimble, basically, right? So it can be very flexible and it can adapt various settings and different healthcare needs. So that's the big thing, basically. That's a positive shift. What unfortunate challenge still we have is, right, as Cindy was mentioning and Kurt was mentioning, still people are using papers, still people are using fax, still people are using custom data set, basically, right? Each of these organizations might have their own data schema, right? And if you are going to expect all this data to come from EMR systems, and if they are going to hope it to be done in a year or two or whatever it is, good luck. Because the reason is that's never going to happen, because the data, what you are asking is what your data, there's going to be base data in the EMR system, right? So what we need to start doing, start thinking is, how could we use AI, right? How can we get the base data? How can we derive the data, what each organization needs, so that the data abstraction does not become a painful experience for them, rather it's an easier thing. Even if you get 80 to 90% of the data from those base data, right? That will be a huge thing, basically. And there are lots of new technologies there, right? Like OCR, NLP, right? The natural language processing, all those things are there. So we should use that. Even if they're going to put a paper there and submit the paper, fine, let's read that paper and get the data out of it and pass it on here. So that is what we should be thinking towards as healthcare leaders. What we should do is, what can we do to help our customers, to help the healthcare to move forward, so that the members can do what they are doing best, basically, to take care of the patients, while we help them with this data transportation, basically.
I like it. I want to hear more about that as we go on. So Kurt, just kind of coming back to you, how do you see new regulations impacting the future of interoperability in healthcare?
Yeah, I think the short answer is it will continue to drive more robust cooperation and data sharing amongst all of the entities within the healthcare ecosystem. Just in the last couple of days, I saw CMS issued a final ruling around payers related to prior authorization. So they're establishing timeframe requirements for payers to respond, and also a reason for denial, as well as leveraging electronic interchange via FHIR APIs for prior authorization information. So this interoperability is not just about provider to provider communications, but really everybody in the ecosystem, payers included.
Very useful. Cindy, other things that you're kind of seeing, just your angle on what you've kind of lived through on regulatory.
Thanks, Rick. And again, thank you for having me on the presentation. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. To Kurt's point, CMS is bringing really, I call them the stoker of the coals, right? So they are bringing the fire to us in more ways than one, from a data perspective, and also saying you have to do it faster and better because our patients need it.
Sure.
More members, obviously Medicare Advantage is growing by leaps and bounds. So no surprise, regulation where there's that great a growth, and that is the future, right? So it's not going away. It's just going to get stronger and with better presence, I think, as we align with value-based care, right? We are just in the infancy of value-based care. And so a lot of people think we're there. We're not. We're just so I'm excited to see how it evolves. But to Kurt's point, the new regs coming out on prior auths and other things, we've had a wild, wild west for a period of time. Sure. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing that they're bringing it. And I always say, when you tell me I have to do something because it's a reg, that's like a kiss of death. But if you tell me I'm doing it because it's the right thing and it's a help to a patient,
sure.
And guess what? It also meets the regulation. I think that things only get regulated if we don't naturally do them in the right fashion. So more to come, because we're not all aligned. We're not all singing with the same hymnal, but we will. So I agree with Kurt. It's more to come, but that's very exciting of what they just released.
Good, appreciate it. Ganesh, and just every one of you is coming from a little different sliver of the industry and seeing regulations in little different ways. Anything that you've lived or aware of that's kind of driving some of your decisions that we didn't mention?
Something on top of what Kurt and Cindy added here, right? Just the fear of AI, right? AI coming in, there are a lot of fears around the world. Oh my God, is it going to take my job? Is it going to do it, right? So everybody is afraid. But just I want to put one thing, because there could be a lot of fears, right? The privacy concerns, complexity, questions, job security, the algorithm transparency, a lot of the problems there. But it's not in my mind, right? The AI is here to help you, not replace you, right? So that is something which people are not getting it, some people say. But regarding the regulations, right? Coming back to the question for the regulations, I'm so happy, in December, I know most of you are aware of that, the HHS finalized the health IT interoperability and algorithm transparency rule, setting pioneering transparency requirements for AI and the predictive algorithms in the certified health IT.
Yeah.
This regulation is the first to require disclosure about the operation and the use of algorithms. I hope this will promote responsible AI use and enhance the understanding and assessment of these technologies in the healthcare settings.
Yeah.
Most of all, hopefully it helps ease the fear of the people about the AI.
Right. I think getting value out. Well, let's stay with you then and talk a little bit more about generative AI in healthcare. So as you definitely sound passionate. I think you've looked at a fair bit. What are you aware of, whether you guys are doing, or you just kind of had good conversations about some groundbreaking applications of generative AI in areas like, I know that you're not as much in drug discovery and
we're not on the drug discovery or that kind of thing. But one thing I would like to say, right, before even getting into the generative AI, right, there are a lot of nice buzzwords around, basically, right? People are talking about AI, machine language, machine learning, deep learning, and now generative AI. Right? Sometimes what people get confused. Okay, what is this like? It's all AI for me, for the common people, right? It's all AI. But there's a slight difference of all those things, right? The artificial intelligence, obviously, it's aimed at building the smart machines that are capable of performing tasks that request automation, right? That's what the AI does, basically. Machine language, on the other hand, is a subset of AI basically, which is focused on developing algorithms that learn and make predictions or decisions from the data what you have given them basically. Whereas the deep learning, it's another subset of the machine learning. What it does is it uses the neural networks with many layers to analyze the data in depth basically. That's what deep learning does. And now finally coming back to the generative AI, this is not a subset of AI, it's a branch of AI. What it does is it specializes in creating new data, new content, all those kind of things. One example, I know like most of you are aware of it, right? When we were hit with the COVID pandemic, basically, right? One of the articles, like a few articles are out there for that one. So what they did was finding for the vaccination, they used this generative AI there. So what they used is, in the traditional approach, how they will do is basically, right? They will have the traditional set of data there. They'll be working on that, then coming up with all these things. But now what's happening is, you use the traditional method with the historical data, but with this help of AI, it can predict what is there in the real time. So which is why some of these things are able to be done faster, basically. I hope at one day or maybe by end of this year, we get some medicine for cancer, basically. Like I've lost a lot of my friends there, and I hope this is going to help us and take us there, basically.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, and I appreciate the definitions, because I do think that is almost as big a problem in solving anything with AI is what do we all think we're talking about? I've watched a lot of people talk right
people
past
get
each
often
other.
confused. Yeah, people often get confused with the terms and with the things, and that's what makes them fear, basically.
Yeah.
So if people are clear on what it is, then I think it help solve the problem much cleaner.
Cindy, anything that you wanted to add or applications that you started to see or talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. As we look at forecasting adherence, this is really important as you, because AI gives you the ability to pattern and forecast in real time, not almost real time. Like we all do things now in almost real time, but AI really gives you a picture. And also, I think that the definitions and understanding what it really is takes away the fear. There's a lot of fear right now in how do you use it appropriately. They think we're building the Terminator. We're not. Right. This is not building the Terminator. This is all for the good. And I think the regulations that we spoke about earlier gives some control to know, hey, we are not, building, something to take over the world. We're really building.
Nefarious.
Yes, absolutely.
Go Dr. Evil.
And I think we need more education. I think what you guys are doing here today is so helpful because there's not enough in the healthcare sector. We go to a lot of conferences. There's not enough talked about around AI and how it helps in lots of predictive ways. I mean, we know it's been used in many forms, but there's not a grassroots campaign to make it acceptable. And I think it really has helped in patterning population health so that we can make things better.
Nice. Kurt, for you, anything that we missed or that you would add as far as applications?
Ganesan and Cindy really did hit the nail on the head here. Absolutely transformative technologies. I do think, and I like the way Ganesan kind of framed that up, is Gen AI is just one part of an overall AI umbrella. I do think at times it can suffer from the shiny object syndrome where people are so focused on that there are a lot of other capabilities, tools in the toolbox, as it were, that can absolutely change the game here. Right. I think it's done a couple of things for us in the healthcare space. One, I think it's put much more of a focus on data. So it's certainly nudged us to get our data houses in order, right. Which is an absolute fundamental requirement for using a lot of these technologies. I'm not seeing a lot in terms of direct patient engagement, I think for good reason.
Sure.
To ensure that the technology is really ready for that. You've got the right control and governance and security around it. I'm seeing a lot more in helping clinicians be more efficient. So in particular, as the industry suffers from staffing shortages, I think this idea of us empowering clinicians to be more efficient and effective through the technology is certainly a trend I think will continue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I like that. Ganesh, and coming back on it a little bit more, and Cindy kind of, I think, well, you mentioned it, but also just the Dr. Evil concept. As we think about it a little bit, what are the ethical and privacy implications of using generative AI in healthcare? And how do you think they should be addressed? I mean, is it regulatory? What do we individually need to do? And how should we think about it a little bit? Because I think the more people understand how we're thinking of the ethics of it, I think that is another way to lower that fear anxiety. Everybody doesn't know, and fear of the unknown.
Yeah. So from my perspective, right, the use of generative AI in the healthcare raises significant ethical and privacy concerns.
Yeah.
Because ethically, there is the risk of biased decision making if AI algorithms are trained on incomplete or the skewed data.
Yeah, sure.
Right? That's a number one risk. So this can lead to the disparities in patient care, right? From a privacy standpoint, the handling of the sensitive data, right, the FHIR data, right? But AI systems must ensure the confidentiality and compliance with regulations like HIPAA, or GDPR, or whatever the thing is. To address this, right, what I think is it's crucial to have transparent AI algorithms, robust data governance policies, and continuous monitoring, right? That's more important, continuous monitoring for the bias or errors, ensuring AI's decisions are fair, accurate, and respectful of patients' privacy. So to me, that's the number one priority, right? Yes, it does a lot of things, but who's validating it? Continuously, somebody has to validate it. There should be some robust guidance there. And it is important to remember that AI is designed to enhance human capabilities and make process more efficient, not to replace human judgment and expertise. If we confuse with these two things, that's a failure in my mind, right? It should be seen as a tool, right? How do you use the word? How do you use your calculator? How do you use all these things, right? You're going to use it as a tool, basically, and augment the work of healthcare. Definitely, it's not a substitute for this one. So I think if we do this, I think we'll be in a good shape, basically. Without that, then it's a big risk.
Good. Well, I think people will be happy to hear that it's a tool for them to use and not a thing that's going to replace them as much.
That's more important, because that's the number one fear, right? I've been saying this one multiple times today. But that is a fear I hear everybody. Oh, you are talking about AI? You're going to replace people? Or then they say, oh, you're going to do everything here? How do you trust AI? I'm not trusting AI. I'm trusting myself here, right? I'm going to use that as a tool. And I'm going to be the master of that one, basically, right? I'm not going to be getting...
I like the calculator analogy. We all learned how to do all this longhand stuff, and then finally they hand you the calculator and you push it in and you're done in no seconds, which I think is kind of the opportunity with Gen AI, is offloading or finding answers that weren't really available, because you can look at large data sets as an individual, collate all that information down to, okay, so where should I go look? What are indications? Cindy, just kind of the ethics side of it, have you all kind of started to tackle that and thought about how you are approaching it?
I think that is as we are partnered with a lot of universities, I think there will be an educational hill that we are beginning to see. I don't think it's enough there. And so as more people understand use cases and how it's used appropriately versus it's replacing everybody and it's building this monster, I think that's we need to talk about it in better understanding. And again, the ethics piece from a patient care standpoint, it is, as long as it's built to help, it should be no different than a syringe, right? How do you use a syringe, a calculator? I mean, it's there to be a tool to help, or a cardiac monitor for that matter. We've got fits and starts of a AED machine that reads a wrong, basically says you're in VTAC shock, right? Or, help,
right.
They're in trouble. You've got the witch's hat, right? Yeah, bad. But that is a predictive algorithm as such, right? it sees this. And so AI has a lot of opportunities for predictions and all good, right? And I think that from, I like the data governance piece because there are already standards and regulations that define data governance. And so if we just apply the same as opposed to being something new or it doesn't fit, it does fit. It's a tool. Both of my partners in crime here have talked about it's another tool and it fits in the toolbox. It's not another toolbox. It's in this. And I think that's really important. Also, when we talk about ethics, it's not the three-headed monster that somebody's pulled out and we're doing experiments like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Terminator Frankenstein, my favorite when we talk about
really like the analogies today.
That's what everybody thinks it is. You have to get it down to the grassroots so we know what we're talking about.
I like it. Kurt, anything that's been left out, experience you've had so far?
Not much to add. I think, Cindy and Ganeshan again kind of nailed it. Obviously a lot of focus on governance, controls, the legal aspects around this, and just kind of touching on what Cindy said, the educational aspects of this, that this is not a replacement technology for clinicians. It's about augmenting what they do. Again, I get back to the AI-empowered clinician, because I do believe healthcare is a very personal service.
For sure.
I don't know of many people that want to be treated solely by robots. They want to be treated by humans, but humans that have all the technology behind them. It's easy to use and it helps enhance the delivery of care.
Good, thank you.
It's only private equity that wants us to be treated by robots. That's my joke of the day. No offense. I love all my private equity friends. I just, as they take over healthcare, that's the Terminator.
So that's good stuff. Well, let's bounce over and talk a little bit more about FHIR, because I think that there is opportunities you've kind of alluded to individually to really get us to the next level. Where there's a lot of learning through HL7, and it did some things. I think we made progress, and then the next iteration is FHIR. So, Ganeshan, if I could start with you, what are the key benefits of adopting the FHIR standards for healthcare systems? And can you provide any examples of successful implementations you've heard about or been a part of?
Oh, yeah. There are several advantages. Hopefully, I don't miss many of them. Basically, I'll try my best to address it. First thing is, they significantly improve interoperability, basically, right? That's why you're going to use FHIR, basically. Making sharing the data across the different systems, it makes it easier, and which might be crucial for the coordinated patient data care, patient. And also the FHIR allows real-time access to the clinical data. In fact, I think it is in 2016 or something, at one of the HIMSS conference, we demonstrated, we created an app called ACVD, basically. It's a heart-related app. What we did was we embedded that app into the Epic, basically. And we were getting the patient data from that using the FHIR, basically. So with that, what we were doing was the member was able to provide the patient's symptoms, and then that ACVD will give us the suggestions what to do, basically. Nice. And again, the member was the doctor. When I'm meaning member, the cardiologist I'm saying, they're not going to blindly read that or something. They're going to obviously validate it and then see if it makes sense, that kind of thing. And these are all some regulations already there. Some of these apps, what we did was based on the regulations, right? So it made that easier. So I can embed this into any of the EMR systems using this FHIR thing, basically. And what is more important is also, you can take the data what you want, rather than it's not like you need to get everything, basically like 1,000-page document like HL7 or something. You can just pick the pieces. You know what? I want just the patient data. I can get just the patient data. I just need something like a little bit more exhaustive data. I can get that. So that flexibility, that adaptability is what makes FHIR much easier to use when compared to HL7 analytics. And another thing also, that's why I said I don't want to forget something here. One more thing, right? I know most of you have iPhone or Android or whatever it is. You see this Apple Health app, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know that uses this FHIR data? It uses the FHIR data, basically. The Smart Health IT, the Apple Health, all these things uses the FHIR thing to get the data from the patient, from the actual user, and you can even get the data from the provider as well. So that's just a start. What we are seeing is just a little thing what we are seeing it, but this is going to expand more. Basically, everything is going to get interconnected. Whether people like it or not, it is going to get interconnected. Obviously, security is the key. We need to make sure that these data are transferred, secured, and all those things. But it is going to be that where everything could be exchanged and the kind of thing. That's where the world is moving towards.
It's powerful. Cindy, just kind of to you, and curious if you really started to apply FHIR, or you've seen good applications for people to kind of think about. You know, I think everybody, we like to be leading edge, not bleeding edge. We like to be fast followers. So I think as we share kind of use cases of success, that helps a lot of the community kind of know, all right, this is kind of a safer area for us to go work on. It's already been trailblazed a bit. So
yeah, I think trailblazing beginning would be like transitions of care. So you're coming out of the hospital and you're crossing over multiple systems. So, you know, you've got to include your pharmacies, and you could, you know, for best practice, you want to include a pharmacy component, your provider, your follow-up provider. They could be multiple providers coming out of the hospital, and the hospital information. That's really, to me, grassroots of where, you know, success can start, largely across all and many organizations, if we can come together. And CMS has said it's important. There's a transitions of care measure that health plans and payers get incentivized for, and those payers incentivize providers. So it's the beginnings of how to connect and what we should use it for.
Heard anything that's been left out, applications that you've kind of participated or heard used where FHIR's been used?
I don't, not much to add. I mean, it's obviously the standard, it's the modern architecture. What I love about it is, you know, getting back to the comment earlier about being document based, it's moving it to much more data atomic, you know, database that we can now kind of parse through that data and get a much richer view of the patient than we ever had before, and use that information to provide more preventative care services. I know we can talk about that, you know, in subsequent topics here, but, you know, that's all based on this standard and technology. So I think we're all jumping on board that. I mean, it is the future and where we're headed.
I think I've kind of heard a couple of things, so I'm a little curious about how do you think the FHIR standards contribute to the personalization of healthcare services? That Ganesh, and I'll start with you. You had mentioned the Apple Watch. So
I did, yeah. I mentioned that already, yeah. So what it does is, right, to continue on that, right, it enables basically the efficient and seamless exchange of detailed patient data among various healthcare systems, right? So what this exchange support is, it supports a tailored care plan based on the patient's medical history, the preferences, and the needs, right? Also, it can facilitate the integration of patient-generated data from the watches, basically the watch or the apps or whatever you think about. That way, everything moves, right? Like, so I touched it already, but that's how it is. That the data is free flowing across the apps and the wearables and all those kind of things. This will provide the healthcare providers more individualized treatments with health management strategies, right? Think about it, if you can monitor your heartbeat from right, like which we can do it from right. That connects to your provider, basically your cardiologist. He can monitor your thing from his thing. There's a beep there. Oh my God, this is something is happening, or this is going to a different pattern. They put a customized treatment plan for you, rather than you taking some big device from the hospital and wearing it on you, putting it a patch on you and walking across all these things, right? That's thing of a past, right? Now things are moving in this direction, basically. That is where this FHIR is going to help with personalization of healthcare services, from my perspective.
Yeah, and Cindy, coming back to you, you had even kind of started there, but just have the standards, I guess, how can they continue to evolve so that you can continue that journey and get kind of more granular? And are you guys doing much or kind of waiting, needing a little bit more so you can go even further and more granular to personalization?
So I think personalization is the way. I also think that when you talk about personalization, it's access, right? In addition, so it gives people access easier. And I think we're going to talk about that a little more as we talk about telemedicine. But when you talk about it, it's also accessibility. So you've got your Apple Watch, and you don't have this big clunky machine. In addition to the communication back, it's a clear communication, because if you've ever had some conversations with patients, my heart does this flit, and you're like, what does that mean? So you can go back and look in the records that are consistently flowing, versus trying to figure out what interpretation Dr. such and such described the flitter, and you're like, I don't know what that means. Because if you've ever, you think about how you describe some things, and you can only imagine what patients describe things as. And so I think it gives the patient access, and also it gives the provider access. So it is, really the holy grail if you think about it, because it's across the board access. And we're just on the forefront. There is nothing, from just touching. I know a lot of organizations have started, across the board. It's just, we're just dipping our toes in the water and trying not to, be afraid that there's something gonna, whop it off when you pull it out.
Very good. Kurt, I know you also examples that you've worked or been waiting for as you guys continue to try and focus on personalization that FHIR Standards have enabled, or kind of where you guys are a little bit on pause waiting for them to develop a little bit more?
Future looking, I think it's definitely, the standard and technology architecture to leverage, I would say, not only the data within the four walls of the provider, but also looking at pulling in external data, not only from, say, a referring provider, from, say, somebody who's being discharged out of a hospital, but also externally at looking at things like social determinants of health information that impact, their personal health care, and help formulate. I know we'll get into this a bit, predictive analytics, but when we're talking about providing care to the patient, this technology enables us now to pull in information from multiple sources to get a broad view of the patient, provide a personalized care plan, and ways to improve their overall health, not just what we're treating.
Good. Well, I think that was good setup. Let's kind of continue drilling down a little bit with that context. Kurt, I was going to have you talk to us a little bit, and at least lead some of the conversation on data science and predictive analytics in healthcare. How's data science being used in predictive analytics for like disease outbreak prediction or healthcare management, or the ways that you have started to see it used and hear about it being used successfully?
Yeah, good question. I can't speak as much to the disease outbreak aspect of this, but certainly from a healthcare management standpoint, absolutely seeing it used in providing capabilities around risk-based models. So as we move more towards value-based care, that necessitates the ability to gather information, understand quality metrics, report on those metrics, and then also calculate, risk-based models around the patient populations. So getting the population health, so understanding who's at high risk, of those patients that you're treating, and what kind of preventative measures can be put in place to prevent things like a rehospitalization or anything else going on in their particular situation. So I'm seeing a lot around that from a predictive analytics standpoint. Also seeing it used internally within provider organizations to understand their health staff needs. So as we touched on earlier around the shortage of clinicians,
right?
And this problem is only going to get worse with a growing population, fewer clinicians. I am seeing it used in certain cases to help not only identify those clinicians at risk of leaving an organization, but also at optimizing their staffing. So think scheduling optimization, for example.
Right.
So how are they utilizing their nurses? Are they being utilized at the top of their licensure, for example? Are there ways to optimize the schedule to get the most out of the resources that a provider has?
Nice. Ghanshan, just kind of other ways that you've seen, and I don't know, you guys are a little bit closer to some other angles of using predictive analytics. What has kind of been good use cases that you all have found so far?
I actually touched upon it already, right? The use case for this one, like say that the disease discovery and the vaccination for the COVID, right?
Yeah, right.
One of the nicer use cases, like which we have seen like in recent past, basically, right? And I think Kurt covered it pretty much everything there in that. But obviously, right, the big difference is the traditional predictive models often rely on the historical data, right, to predict the future events. While with this AI, it can utilize the historical data and also make the real-time assumptions without predefined rules, which is a double-edged sword, right? Like it's a double-edged sword there. But enabling to learn and adapt swiftly to the new parents, which is why I say it can have without predefined rules, it can predict a lot of the things, but somebody need to look at it and make sense of it, right? I will not take whatever it is there as is. So that is what we should be doing here. So I think the biggest success in my mind is COVID-19. And I'm praying that there's going to be another success in this year. Maybe like by end of this year, if you all see these recordings, you might see, oh my God, we got the vaccine, we got the cure for cancer. That will be huge. Think about with all these kind of things if we get that. And I'm more optimistic because with the way these things are moving, I'm more optimistic. I think I won't be surprised if we find something by the end of this year or maybe in the next year, whatever it is.
Excellent. Cindy, in your group, are you doing and utilizing predictive analytics? And you want to share kind of just how you're finding value?
Absolutely, Rick. I've been chasing this for about 15 years in my world, from predictive analytics, and now we've really got something. So, looking at history now is not all I can do. I've built some platforms that are 100% risk-based. Okay. So we don't get paid unless the person is adherent, taking their meds 80% of the time. So you had to get really good at the cross-section of medical physics and real physics. So movement of time, and if those of us who took the medical grade physics of what that looks like, it's a little different. But if you cross-section those, I always say that's predictive analytics in a computerized fashion, so you can actually do it faster. And you've got the calculator versus the long division that we always have to do, or the formulas when you're solving for X and there's an X and a Y. You can not do it by hand. It is so much better. Also, from ours are predicting who's going to be in need. Right? From our, we've got social determinants of health. Who's gonna be in need? There's so many factors that you can utilize predictive analytics based on what the CDC gives you and where they live. And if they're in food deserts, they're in transportation deserts. Cross-section that with what the health plans are providing for supplemental benefits. And then you see your gap. That's how you should be writing additional benefits for your plan. There's so many ways to be able to utilize predictive analytics. And I love Kurt's point about vaccinations with the value-based care. The number one, as you asked, number one job that is out there in the top 20 needs is infection prevention. So if you cross that with value-based care, what do you get? You get vaccinations. And so we can predict the likelihood of parents who are going to vaccinate their children so we can better educate. Sometimes it's knowing, it's being in front of it, right? It's, as you said, nobody wants to be on the bleeding edge. We want to be on the cutting edge. That's what this allows us to be.
Nice. Let's jump topics. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the future of telemedicine and remote care. Kurt, if I start with you, how has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the landscape of telemedicine and remote care? And what do you foresee for its future?
Yeah, good question. I mean, look, this technology has been around for a while now. I think it was already gaining traction kind of pre-pandemic. I think what the pandemic did is really served as an accelerant around that, which I think is a good thing that came out of that. So, and I do view it as more than the kind of phone call, video chat capability. To me, this is around the remote monitoring capability, remote controlled care, for example. So the use of these tools, again, advancing quite rapidly. I think it's here to stay. I think the potential is enormous. In particular, getting back to when you look at care delivery and the fact that we've got, again, a shortage of clinicians, I think this will become much more mainstream. It really already has become mainstream in my mind. And so it'll be another tool in the toolbox, to get back to that, to use to help provide better care, lower cost, and help address some of the staff shortages at the same time.
Good. Cindy, if I come to you, I wanted you had kind of made mention about telemedicine and some experience that you've had there, but what do you foresee for its future now that we've all kind of had to live via some level of telemedicine? I think every one of us individually, but also you all running bigger portfolios and systems.
I think that telemedicine is a phenomenal tool in the toolkit. I think it gives, if we look at, it gives access. We are, part of what we need in healthcare is access. That's what we like. When you talk about social determinants of health, when you talk about everything, understanding its access. And so you're seeing a lot of access in rural hospitals that don't have specialists available, but they can via iPad. So it's not just in your home, it's giving rural communities connections to the best care from, the Harvards of the world or the Sloan Ketterings. There are people that now reach out in a different way. ER visits for mental health. It's, we've got a shortage in mental health providers, but it gives an ability to have them right there on an iPad. I think that it is here to stay. It is a tool. We need to utilize it as a tool. We need to be open about what it looks like. It also gives our aging community an ability to stay at home, and be cared for differently. And again, I think that the need is, we are challenged as a group of providers and caregivers to ensure that people understand how to access. So telemedicine, when we make it complicated to get in, it's difficult. I will say that it needs to be on a 4th grade level, and a 4th grade level for an 80-year-old versus a 4th grade level for a 4th grader today, because there's a different paradigm.
Yeah, no doubt. Gosh, and also telemedicine, you have kind of a point of view that hasn't been shared about kind of what we should think about there. And then I want to come back to some of the challenges that you all run into in just trying to roll out telemedicine. So
I think Kurt and Cindy pretty much covered everything. I don't want to take up the time. I know it's 12 more minutes. You may have multiple questions there, but one thing is, I'm strongly in agreement with both of them there, right? It's here to stay, basically. There's a lot of things to help. And also think about the security of the provider, right? When you're talking about health, so the mental health and other things, right? Before, people has to be a little bit scared to see somebody, or like whichever the way, right? Now they can do it with comfort and things there. So it is there, but still we should not forget about the security and other things, how these things are being done. Those kind of, that's a separate topic there, but it is here to stay.
Yeah. Kurt, if I come back to you and just kind of share the journey that you've been on, and now that I think everybody agrees that it's here to stay and provides a great additional value, what have you seen as kind of some of the challenges to roll it out, and kind of any novel or innovative ways that you've kind of overcome or seen people overcome some of the.
Yeah, I think Cindy kind of nailed this on the head earlier. Certainly the adoption of it, the education around it is important. In particular, as you talk about the overall patient experience. I think from a technologist standpoint, and I get back to not just the conversation that's happening, but also if you look at things like remote monitoring, it's now this absolute explosion in data. So now if you're talking about remote monitoring and devices in the home or in a care facility, you've got all this telemetry coming off these devices that now really need to be analyzed and really used for insights and alerting that could drive, clinicians to intervene when they need to intervene and not when they don't really need to intervene. So I think that's kind of one of the biggest challenges we have from a technology standpoint is just it will explode the amount of data and information now we need to process.
Okay. Yeah, Cindy, just coming back to you, other thoughts? I think it was some really great points about you really got to continue to educate everybody so that they are more and more comfortable and more and more familiar. And what was that TV show? Are you smarter than a fifth grader? But at any rate,
yes, that was it. Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
I think I regularly wasn't. But what are some of the other challenges? Kurt mentions data, but as you've kind of rolled it out from a technology standpoint, what is some of the challenges that you've faced, overcome, or you guys are trying to overcome to really continue that adoption?
I think, absolutely, Rick. I think the telemedicine from Kurt's perspective is that they're keying up a lot of data at us. And so if we're not careful on how we present it to the clinician, what's coming in, there will be care missed and critical points missed. So I think we need to be really careful about how we define what are critical gates for our clinicians and how do we tee that information up. And then also, how do we, and this is one of the things so with telemedicine, I have access to a provider in my living room, right?
Yep.
And so how do I better have a better visit? How do we help the patients know what they should bring, right? Like at the doctor's office, you've got a receptionist or a nurse that does a lot of the prep work for the provider. If you're in a televisit, you're just like, boom, there they are. And there's no prep. You may have answered a questionnaire or you may not have because the process was clunky, right? Yeah. So I get back to we need to be more intuitive about the process, the workflows. Like in medicine, we want the outcome and we look at, okay, here's the experience, but there's no, how does this really work? Like how is it step by step defined in the use case? Because we want to move fast. Everything is developing fast. So again, I would encourage us to see what we have taken out. I think that you see the mental health visits and some of the visits in the rural health settings very successful with because there is a person, there's a clinician, shepherding Dr. Stewart on an iPad. Dr. Stewart has no shepherd. How do we create a process that allows that shepherd? Okay. Right? Because I'm supposed to know Cindy, and I just keep being like, Cindy, beam in. And I hear this all the time. You're just beamed in, and I don't know, and
no context.
You got a patient unloading their pills out of the dishwasher because that's where they store them because they have so many of them and the dishwasher doesn't work. And, and you also, providers need to be better equipped of when they encounter things in the home they're not expecting. No food, they need a ramp and they're on the third floor. Where did they refer those to, right? So, because we're caregivers, we want to help. So there needs to be, in this new world, we need to have an ability to have our community-based organizations aligned so that a provider knows who to go to. And it's not findhelp.org, that's wonderful. but that's just another place for them to go not to get what they need. So we need a process. I mean, that's a larger picture we could talk days on, but we need a process to make it successful, because without that support, people are just they're gonna be turned off, and they're not gonna want to use it.
Yeah.
And those are the ones we want to use it, right?
Yeah. So you got to make it easy adoption. Good. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. So if you have questions out there, now's a good time to share them. I think the last topic that I thought we could just touch on briefly, and Kurt, I was curious, collaboration and partnership in healthcare IT. We've talked kind of all about it, but getting down to a bit of brass tacks, why is collaboration between tech companies, healthcare providers, and policymakers crucial for healthcare IT innovation in your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a complex industry. It's fragmented. It's, by some estimates, 18 to 20% of our economy and growing.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of challenges. I mean, we're all in this together. So everybody in the ecosystem will be important to participate in advancing quality and helping to bend the cost curve. For providers, I think it's going to be critical to embrace the technology from tech companies that they're providing. I think technology offers, and I'm a bit biased because I'm a technologist, but I do think it offers so many ways to address the enormous challenges in the industry, from staffing shortages, from providing better care, et cetera, et cetera. For tech companies, I think important to really listen to the clinician side of things, because in and of itself, the technology doesn't provide the value, it's the use of the technology.
Right.
Adoption is so important. So having the clinician voice in the room when we're talking about, developing new technologies or how they're adapted is going to be essential to be successful, as a collaborative group. So I'll just kind of stop there because I know we're short on time, and turn it over to colleagues here on the panel.
Sure. Ganeshan, just kind of finishing thoughts, you had talked a lot about FHIR too, and it provides capability, and then you brought in regulatory too, and I think them coming together with technology enablers. And what are your thoughts about how do we optimize that, and what do you recommend?
So I think some mandates, some regulations, making sure that the data are able to communicate and available, that's more important. And also like the efficient use of AI, right? The careful usage of AI, that's also more critical basically. So that way we can open up all these things. And then instead of complaining, saying that the data is not available, we can see how we can get the data out of whatever the base data they have. How can we derive the data what we want? So that is what I think we should be doing it.
Good. Cindy.
One more thing I wanted to add. Sorry about that. Not for this one, but I think one important thing I think we did not touch it up here is the security, right? We talked about all this nice data transportation, all these things, but security is the key. And I know we don't have time to do that. But if somebody has questions on that thing, maybe they can put in those questions, and we'll be happy to answer it after the meeting as well. But I know it's a more concerning thing and a more critical thing. And
it's a great point. We would probably do an hour on data security.
Yeah, it might take even more than that.
We'll see. See what Kishore was put together. Cindy, any kind of last thoughts there about how you believe, providers, technology, and regulatory kind of can come together and really help patients at the end of the day, help all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kurt hit it with use cases and ensuring that there is you can't call yourself healthcare tech if you don't have a clinician on the C-suite. So you can call yourself tech, but you can't call yourself healthcare tech, because being a technologist, they are an expert, but a clinician who cares for a patient, they're an expert, and those worlds have to come together. And we will absolutely, that is the best world for all of us. It fixes everything: staffing shortages, workflows, providers being able to have a better income and a better life because they're not overworking themselves with paper documentation.
Right.
I thought we'd hit the pinnacle when I could scan pills in and go, look, it's in the system. I don't have to write. But that was just the beginning. That's 30 years ago almost. God, I'm old. No, but again, it is being able to come together and reach across. We are in the same. We need to reach across the aisles.
Yeah.
There is a healthy balance, Kurt, between technologists and clinicians. There's a healthy rub every time. It is always that way. But again, it has to occur. Otherwise, you build a product that no clinician's going to pick up because they're going to be like, I'm going to use my fax because that works in my workflow. I mean, we started. I think it's full circle.
Excellent. Well, we are at the top of the hour. This has been terrific, and time kind of flew. There is a whole lot more we could certainly talk about. I really appreciate each one of you taking the time out of your day.